Welcome to the Deep Dive, the shortcut to expertise, where we transform dense research stacks into the most fascinating essential knowledge, all tailored just for you. Today, we are heading high into the sky, specifically to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. And this is a place that's so much more than just a collection of stunning 14,000-foot peaks. The park itself was established back in 1915 by President Woodrow Wilson, and it is a true land of extremes. You're looking at 415 square miles, so over 250,000 acres, and the elevation swing is just massive. It goes from about 7,800 feet all the way up to 14,259 feet at the top of Long's Peak. But the reason this place matters on a global scale is that back in 1976, the UN designated it as a World Biosphere Reserve, which means it's recognized internationally for its ecological significance and, for its efforts to balance conservation with sustainable human use. So our mission today is clear. We're going way beyond the basic trail guides. We want to uncover the sheer geological engine that forged this place, the incredibly fragile ecosystems, and the really brutal complexities park managers face today. Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start with the ancient history, literally what's buried beneath your hiking boots.
Right, you really have to grasp the timeline. When you stand on a trail in RMNP, you are standing on the exposed foundation of the continent.
The actual foundation.
Exactly. The core rock here is 1.8 billion-year-old Precambrian metamorphic rock. It's just hard to wrap your mind around that kind of time scale.
It's before what pretty much any complex life existed.
It predates complex life forms entirely.
Right.
So this foundation, it was buried, then uplifted for the first time about 300 million years ago. That formed the ancestral Rockies.
Okay.
But what's incredible is that those mountains completely eroded away, just flattened. Gone. Then around 68 million years ago, a massive period of crustal violence called the Laramide orogeny uplifted them again. And that second uplift created the mountains we see today.
So that's the raw structure. But what about the look of the park? The dramatic carvings?
That was the final sculptor, the glaciers. Quaternary period glaciation. It was this grinding, relentless force, these enormous sheets of ice just scraped away up to 5,000 feet of overlying sedimentary rock.
5,000?
And that's what exposed that rugged, ancient basement rock we were talking about.
So those iconic rounded valleys and sharp peaks, they're basically scars left by millennia of ice.
They are. But look at a feature like Lumpy Ridge. It's a perfect example of a nunatak.
A nunatak? What's that?
It's a geological term for a rock outcrop that actually stood above the glacial ice. So it was spared from that intense erosion that reshaped everything around it.
So it looks totally different because the ice never touched it.
Exactly. And it's amazing to think those forces are still active, just on a much smaller scale. The park still has a few small glaciers.
Right, like Andrews and Taylor glaciers.
Exactly. They're small, but they're persistent remnants of that massive sculpting period. A little reminder.
Okay, so this is where the geography gets really interesting. I mean, even a little bit confusing if you think you know your basic hydrology, the continental divide.
It's taught as this ultimate watershed separation.
Right. Water on one side goes to the Pacific, the other side to the Atlantic. Simple.
That's the rule. But RMNP has this fascinating geographical anomaly along the Never Summer Mountains. So the divide runs right through the park center, right?
Yeah.
But for about 6 critical miles, the divide makes this tight horseshoe bend.
A horseshoe. So it loops back on itself.
It does. And the result is that streams on the eastern slopes of the Never Summer Mountains,
Which should be flowing east toward the Atlantic.
they actually flow inward. They join the headwaters of the Colorado River.
Wait, what? So they flow west?
They end up in the Pacific Ocean. Water that should be destined for the Atlantic takes a massive detour. It's a literal hydrological glitch right there in the park.
That is absolutely mind-bending. A river system that breaks the rules. Which brings us from the bedrock to the biology. That massive difference in elevation, that 6,000-foot span, it means RMMP isn't just one environment.
No, not at all. It's 4 distinct ecological zones, sort of stacked on top of each other. You have the montane, subalpine, and the alpine tundra.
And there's a fourth one that threads through all of them, right?
Yeah.
The riparian zone.
The riparian zone is absolutely critical. Think of it as the ecological arteries of the park, the areas right around streams and rivers.
The wetlands.
Exactly. And they're defined by dense willows, cottonwoods, that kind of thing. They are environmental superworkers. They filter water, prevent erosion, and provide essential cover for wildlife.
So they're biodiversity hotspots.
Huge hotspots. And that's why protecting them is often the single greatest management challenge in the park.
Okay, so let's start low, in the montane zone. That runs from about 5,600 up to 9,500 feet. This is the postcard version of Colorado that most people see.
It is. It's the most biodiverse and definitely the most accessible. This is where you find those wide signature meadow valleys, Moraine Park, Horseshoe Park, and the classic forests of ponderosa pine and quaking aspens.
And it's prime wildlife viewing.
The prime habitat, yeah. You've got vast herds of mule deer, the famous Rocky Mountain elk, and now moose.
Which is interesting because moose weren't originally there, were they?
No, they weren't historically found there, but they were successfully restored to the park's waterways back in 1978.
Okay, so as we climb higher, we hit the subalpine zone. That's the transition area, between 9,000 and 11,000 feet.
Right, and this is where the landscape starts getting serious. The whole character of the forest changes. You move into these dense stands of Engelmann spruce and subalpine fir.
And the conditions get a lot tougher.
They intensify rapidly as you approach the tree line, and that leads to one of the most memorable features in the park, Krummholz.
Which is German, right, for crooked wood.
Exactly. And these are severely stunted, deformed trees right near the tree line. The ground might be protected by a boulder, letting a tree grow, maybe 5 feet high.
But no higher.
Any part of the tree that tries to grow beyond the shelter of that rock is immediately killed by extreme wind and ice crystals.
So the trees are essentially shaping themselves to survive. And they can live for centuries like that, almost like a natural bonsai.
It's an incredible visual metaphor for the struggle to survive. And then you break through that and you hit the highest zone, the alpine tundra. No more trees.
And that's over a third of the whole park, above 11,000 feet. So what does it take for life to survive up there?
The conditions are truly Arctic. Intense cold, hurricane-force winds, high UV exposure, and maybe a 40-day growing season.
That's it.
That's it. So the plants that survive are absolute masterpieces of adaptation. Many are cushion plants that grow low to the ground to conserve heat, and they have these astonishingly deep tap roots, 5-10 feet down, to anchor themselves.
And they use some pretty interesting chemistry to stay warm, right?
Oh, it's fascinating. A lot of the flowering plants have dense hairs for insulation, but they also produce deep red or purple pigments.
Why red?
Those pigments are crucial. They help convert sunlight and UV radiation directly into heat. It's like they create their own little micro greenhouse effect right next to the soil.
That detail about the red pigment is a perfect deep dive nugget. It's amazing to think something so complex could also be so delicate.
It is intensely fragile. I mean, the tundra took thousands of years to establish itself. A single misplaced footstep can destroy a community of those plants.
And recovery takes how long?
Centuries. It can take centuries for that vegetation to recover, and that fact is central to the park's whole stewardship challenge.
And what about the animals up there?
Equally specialized. You have the pika, which is constantly harvesting grasses for winter, yellow-bellied marmots, and the white-tailed ptarmigan, which does this phenomenal color change, turning completely white for camouflage in the winter. It's a whole different world up there, a completely different world. And shifting gears, we have to talk about how this ancient, layered environment is facing the modern era.
Yeah.
Which really raises the question, what happens when a landscape forged by these massive, slow-moving forces gets hit by rapid human-induced changes?
And the data on temperature increases here is pretty sobering.
It is. Over the last century, RMNP has seen its average annual temperature increase by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but...
But it has immense ripple effects. The snow melts earlier, which means drier summers, which directly lengthens the fire season.
And the warmer temperatures have created an absolute crisis for the pine forests.
A total crisis. The temperature increase since the 1990s has allowed the mountain pine beetle to just thrive, unchecked. Historically, the cold winters would kill them off.
But not anymore.
With warmer lows, fewer larvae are dying. And crucially, the beetles can now complete their reproductive cycle in 1 year instead of 2. This population explosion has led to millions of acres of dead trees across the Rockies. RMNP was hit hard.
And all that dead wood just becomes fuel.
Exactly. Which feeds into the wildfire dilemma. Park managers have to walk this razor-thin line with fire.
Because we hear so much about the destruction. But historically, low-severity fire was a good thing, wasn't it?
Absolutely essential. I mean, high-severity wildfires like the Fern Lake fire in 2012 caused tremendous damage, soil degradation, flooding risks.
Right.
But low-severity natural burns are ecologically necessary. They clear out the dead fuel, fertilize the soil, and open up space for new growth.
So how do managers handle that?
They achieve that balance through proactive fuel management, so thinning, and by carefully using prescribed burns when conditions are right. It's about restoring the natural function of fire without risking a catastrophe.
And beyond fire, the other huge management controversy is about the animal that everyone comes to see, the elk.
Yes, the classic ungulate dilemma. It's the ultimate display of the consequences of altering an ecosystem. RMMP supports a huge summer herd, maybe 2 to 3,000 elk.
Because their natural predators are gone.
Precisely. Back in the early 1900s, the gray wolf and the grizzly bear were completely extirpated from this region.
So without predators, the herd just exploded.
Yeah.
And that had immediate impacts on the most vulnerable places, those riparian zones we talked about.
Exactly. The overgrazing by that massive elk herd severely degraded those critical wetland habitats. Willows and aspens, vital for so many other species, they just couldn't grow back. The elk were eating the new shoots too fast.
So the Park Service had to step in.
They were forced into this uncomfortable interventionist role. They use fences, they call them exclosures, to protect patches of wetland plants from elk just to give them a chance.
And they also call the herd, right?
They do. Because widespread wolf or grizzly reintroduction is still so controversial, the NPS calls about 50 elk a year. It's a necessary, if difficult, tool to restore some balance.
It's the ultimate trade-off. Direct human intervention like fencing and culling to correct for previous human actions like removing predators. And speaking of human actions, the biggest reality for RMMP today is just the sheer volume of people.
It's immense. RMMP saw 4.1 million recreational visitors in 2023. It's consistently one of the top 5 most visited national parks, and that popularity puts extreme stress on everything.
Which is why the park had to fundamentally change how it operates.
Absolutely. To manage that crowding, they implemented a permanent timed entry reservation system. This is a critical detail for anyone listening. If you plan to visit during peak hours, basically May through October, you must have a reservation.
And you have to book it far in advance.
Weeks or months in advance, often. It's just necessary to manage the flow.
So if you do get in, the ultimate experience is Trail Ridge Road.
It is an engineering marvel. It's U.S. Route 34, and it's the highest continuously paved highway in the country. It hits a summit of 12,183 feet.
So you're driving almost entirely through the alpine tundra.
You are. Which means, of course, it doesn't stay open year-round. Most of the road is closed all winter due to heavy snow and avalanche risk.
But when it is open, the views are unparalleled.
Unparalleled. And once you're in, the park has over 300 miles of hiking trails, great fishing, and for the really adventurous, serious rock climbing and mountaineering.
Which brings us to a final word of caution. The scale of this place is serious.
Very serious. While the park is accessible, the altitude and terrain are unforgiving. Between 2007 and 2024, the park recorded 77 fatalities.
Wow.
And the sobering fact is that the vast majority of those were accidental falls while hiking or climbing. It just underscores that this high-altitude recreation demands preparation and a deep respect for the park's rugged character. What's so fascinating here is that constant negotiation. Park managers are stewards of a landscape that took 1.8 billion years to create. They're dealing with forces like fire and predators. But they have to balance that ancient timeline against millions of people who want to access it right now.
Exactly. We've covered everything from the deep Precambrian roots to that surprise detour of the Continental Divide and the fragile life systems of the tundra. And remember that fact. A single footstep on that tundra causes damage that takes centuries to heal.
Right.
So next time you consider visiting, think about the trade-off inherent in that World Biosphere Reserve designation. In a place defined by these colossal spans of time, billions of years for geology, thousands for glaciation, how does the sudden, intense popularity of millions of annual visitors challenge that core mission of preservation? That balance between access and eternity really is the enduring question. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the extremes of Rocky Mountain National Park. Take this knowledge and use it not just to inform your next trip, but to really appreciate the monumental forces at play whenever you encounter a landscape preserve for the world. Go explore further.